And we are live. Welcome back to Hanging Out Podcast, possibly back from the dead. We're still not sure yet. Minus one bear, plus one Bruce. Still, today we're joined by Stephen Najarian, who you might know from his fantastic paintings of dragons and castles, or from his avid convention appearances and Twitch streams. My voice. Steve, how you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you guys doing?
Doing good.
Good. You wanted to talk about some Renaissance stuff. I've never been to a Renaissance fair.
Oh, they're awesome. They're
What?
so much
Never?
fun.
I've never been to one. Well, I did SCA in college where you dress up in armor
Sure.
and guys bigger than you kick your ass with swords. So
Yeah.
that's my experience.
Basically an ongoing.
I didn't make
Renaissance
any
fair.
money selling art there, so nor did I try.
Well, it'd be hard if you're dressed up in armor fighting people.
Yeah. So how does that coincide? If anyone's like me, I didn't even know you could go to these things and sell prints. I thought it all had to be, period accurate type stuff. And
So how it all kind of started was back in 2015, maybe 2016. I was at a local convention. It's a small convention. It was called Super Mega Fest, and my booth neighbor was a potter. They had all pottery stuff, and I was talking to them, and they mentioned that they exhibited at our local Renaissance fair, and I was like, huh, interesting. And they're like, you'd probably do really well there, and I'm like, interesting. So I was talking to her, and she was like, the big mistake that I wish that I didn't make was they have an option where you can try it out for a couple of weekends. And she was like, I didn't know that, so I did it for the whole 8 weeks. The big kind of issue about Renaissance fairs, most of them, the big ones, they're all 8 weeks.
wow.
Which means you gotta have your stuff. You gotta be there 8 weekends out of the year.
Big commitment.
It is a big commitment, but the benefit is everything is all there, and you
leave your stuff there?
Yeah, no, it stays there. So before the fair starts, I will show up, I will set everything up, and then for opening weekend or the next weekend, you just show up. And my booth, I now have a permanent wooden structure booth. It's kind of somewhere between a very large shed and a small house. So it has, the doors get locked over the course of the week. You just unlock the doors, you open everything up. I have canvases and metal prints that, I take down for the week, put those up. The prints and the playmats all stay out, and you turn the lights on. And that's
You're ready to go.
basically it. You can have the booth ready to go in 5 minutes.
So do people? How does that work? Is there a booth front, or do people go in the house, or?
Yeah. So here I can, if you want me to share my screen, I can show you what my booth looks like now.
What was your first experience there like? Do you just
First experience, it was okay. This was so at my fair they have these rental spots like this. It's probably about somewhere around 15 by 8 or 10.
So this was your first foray.
This was my second year at the
Okay.
fair. So my first year I was in, they gave me a tent.
Okay.
I rented a tent from another vendor that the fair facilitated. It was a 10 by 10 tent in the rental area, and I tried it out for 2 weeks. It went okay. The first weekend went pretty good. I remember I was pretty pleased with the sales. However, the second weekend it rained. And, the big thing about Ren fairs is they are, predicated on the weather. And if it's a rainy day, people aren't going to come out. So I actually, as much as I would have loved to have 2 really great weekends as a test to test out the fair. It was actually good, so I could experience like the fair on how it works on like a good weekend and how it, works on a bad weekend. So I kind of got, in my 2 weeks, I got to see, the two sides. It's not like every weekend is going to be fantastic every weekend.
So in a way, it worked out really well. You got to see both sides of the coin.
Yep.
Can you zoom in on the image a little bit so we can see a little better?
It is a crummy Facebook photo.
Sure, but better than nothing.
Yeah, so basically it's kind of like a 10 by 10 space. I had a back wall here that I tried to hang some stuff, and I brought 2 tables, so you could like walk into the space. I think me and like my friend or assistant stood back here. I had, my prints and my playmats out. It worked pretty good. It went well enough that I wanted to try it for the 8 weeks. And so this is what the rental spot looks like. Because the thing is, like, it rained and I had some damaged stuff.
Oh, in the tent.
I told myself after that fair, I was like, I am never doing a tent. Like, if I'm going to do a Ren fair, I want to have a roof.
Right.
Because some of my stuff got damaged, and that kind of sucked. But this was the rental spot. I believe it was the rental fee for the 8 weeks was like $4,200. So if you figure by weekend, it's somewhere around like $500, a little over $500 per weekend. And for what is close to a 10 by 20 space, in the convention scene, that's pretty good.
That's a nice bit of real estate.
Right. So
comparison.
The 20 this was 2017. It went okay. I was looking at the numbers. There were 1, 2, 3. There were like 4 weekends that I would say were like, for the time were pretty good. There were a couple of weekends that, were not very good. But it was an amount that I was like, I think it's worth doing again, because thing about my fair is it's like an hour away from my parents. So I could go home to my parents, either on Friday night, and then use their car, drive to the fair Saturday and Sunday, and then get a ride back to where I was living in New Jersey at the time. So it wasn't like a super difficult commute.
Convenient enough.
I got to stay with my parents, so there was like no hotel cost, very low food cost, because I could either like pack a lunch or I would buy lunch at the fair, and then go home and have dinner with my parents. So it was I was very lucky. It was very cost effective to do for me.
So it's interesting how, like, if people are looking to get into doing Ren fairs, thinking about the location of the Ren fair and whether they've got someone to stay in the neighborhood that they can, go back and forth or just stay out there for the, what is it, a 9-week run, you said?
8 weeks, yeah.
8-week run.
I mean, there are people, like, the big vendors, like, they'll either potentially rent, a Airbnb or hotel, or a lot of them camp. The rent, a lot of the rent fairs, they do have living quarters up above. My booth that I have now does have a living quarters, but the fair and the town, you're not allowed to live
camp
on
out
site.
In there.
Yeah. I've heard different stories. I've heard one was that there were very wild parties at the fair, and the town was kind of sick of it. And I also heard the fire department, like a lot of the buildings are not up to code.
Sure.
And the fire department was like, hey, you guys got like, we're going to give you like 3 years to like fix all of this. And nobody did. So they're like, all right, well, you didn't do it. So
Yeah,
you can't live
the carpenter in me, when I see these houses, really wants to know who does the upkeep.
So I can tell you, I have,
keeping
I met a contractor. He apparently lives like across the street from the fair, and he does a lot of work on a lot of the booths. So he's now my main go-to person for doing stuff. Like this booth right here is owned by the fair,
Right.
so they are, responsible for, any like upkeep or maintenance to it. But like my booth that I now own, I'm responsible.
Let's scroll
for
over
it.
to your booth so we can see
So
that.
yeah, all right. So this is my booth now. Let me.
When you talk about owning it, what does that mean?
That means so. Here. Oh Jesus! It's a really small photo. So what I mean is, so at my fair, I tried it for 2 weekends in 2016. I did a rental spot in 2017 and 2018. And they have a rule where you're only allowed to rent for 2 years. And after that, you either need to buy a booth, build a booth, or you're basically, cut off. It just so happened at the end of the 2018 season, there was a booth very close to the front. This booth used to be a cloak booth. So you can see the countertops were not in there. I think these lights right here or next to them, there were the 2 long racks with there was like pieces of wood that hung down, and there would be a dowel that goes across, so the cloaks would hang from that, and there was a little like wooden pedestal where there was a checkout. They were selling the booth. They didn't want to do the show anymore, and it was up for sale. And I was told the booth was the booth owner was asking for $20,000. And
wow,
after the 2018 fair, I was like, it was like right on the line between whether I thought it was like worth it or not. Because
sorry, how much money?
$20,000 for the booth.
Okay, I'll just pull that out.
That's a chunk of change. Here. Yeah.
it's a lot, and keep in mind, that's not including the booth fee. Like that's how much it costs to just.
You still have to pay the booth fee?
I still have, because the Ren Fair doesn't own the booth. They own the land, and any like major changes I make to the booth, I need to get approval.
So you're purchasing a piece of property and then basically paying an entrance fee or a fee to use that property as a market under the Ren Fair business.
Yep.
Okay.
So, like for instance, when I first purchased the booth, I was kind of like, I kind of want to get rid of this tree, but like I have to get approval from the fair. Any major changes I make to the booth, they have to approve. So like originally when I purchased the booth is, you can't really see it, but it's green and white. And I was talking to the contractor that I found to do the work that needed to be done to the booth to get it set up for me so I could sell art there. We talked about painting the booth. And when I approached that with them, they're like, well, like, what color are you thinking of changing it to? Because we got to make sure it doesn't clash with any other booths, and they have final say in that. I was like,
the Ren Fair is basically an HOA.
Yes, yeah, very much so.
I feel like I'm on an episode of Shark Tank at this point. When you talked about $20,000, right? I feel like I'm on this weird episode of Shark Tank where people have just given a pitch and it doesn't sound great to begin with, and the sales are going to decide whether it is or not. Yep. I need you to start telling me some sales numbers, or people are going to start turning off the show. They're going to be like, "Oh, these people are telling me to spend $20,000 on my art business where I can't paint the walls."
in 2018, I did somewhere around 20,000 in sales for the 8 weeks, and my profit, when you deduct all the expenses,
Right.
was somewhere around 10,000.
Okay.
So I was kind of thinking, okay, well, if I'm going to make 10,000 a year, it's going to take like 2 years to fully pay off the booth, and then, it's basically like a 2-year investment.
Right.
Well, in 2019, my sales jumped. I did about 34,000 in sales, and my profit was about almost 22,000. So,
And you're still renting at that point, or?
well, so what we did when the purchase, when I decided, I was like, you know what, I think I want to purchase this booth. It's very close to the front. It's in a great location. I think I can turn this into a booth that will sell art really well. We started talking about loans. My parents at the time had a open home equity line of credit line open. And so what we ended up doing was we used that to purchase the booth. I was making all the payments on it.
Those come with interest.
So it was about like 4%. I think it was somewhere around like 4%, 4.5% interest. Because I looked at like a business loan, and they wanted like 12%. So
Right. So it was equivalent to about where mortgage interest was around that time.
Probably also like a car payment.
Yeah.
Back in 2019, cars weren't.
Right. So it's not an onerous interest rate, and you also had a plan for like, I will be able to pay this back within a couple years at most.
Yeah, I figured like if I can have this booth paid off in 2 years, the plan going in was like, if I can, it's going to suck for 2 years, with the minimum payments, but after that, it's basically an investment.
Yeah.
You take the hit now, and then over time you're gonna recoup that and more. And 2019, the show went a lot better than I was expecting. I thought there would be a slight bump from moving from like the back area to the front of the booth, the front of the show, but my sales came close to doubling. So that was a huge jump. Unfortunately, COVID happened,
and that was your biggest year, right?
So no, actually. So my biggest year was 2021 when we came back. My sales jumped again. I did 53,000 in sales at the show.
Wow.
And when you
over an 8-week period where you're working all of 16 days total.
Period. Yep. And then when you factor in all of the expenses, my profit was 30,000, and that's like, a low, to like middle, like bottom middle class income right there.
Right off
if you told someone that they could make roughly $30,000 on 16 days of work, I can't think of anyone that would turn that down.
Right. So now, like, the big issue with the Ren Fair is, it's an 8-week commitment. You got to figure out how to be there for 8 weeks. And my fair lines up with Dragon Con, and it lines up with New York Comic Con. So one of the reasons why I was debating at the time in like 2017, 2018 on whether I want to like do this or not is if I don't have people running the booth, I can't do Dragon Con and I can't do New York Comic Con.
Right. Which are two of your other biggest shows.
Dragon Con is my biggest show. Dragon Con is somewhere around the equivalent of 2 very good weekends at the fair, 3 to 4, decent to okay weekends at the fair. Yeah. So, I will make more if I just do the Ren Fair. But
so you end up hiring someone to do.
So I had some friends that lived in the area that were willing to help out, and I had a friend of mine from middle school who loves the Ren Fair and jumped at the opportunity to work the booth. So I pay her to run the booth.
Like on a commission?
What?
On a commission or hourly?
Yeah, so I have a pay structure with her where she gets like a flat rate for the day,
Plus.
but if certain like sales numbers are met, bonuses get tacked on. So, ideally, like a good weekend, she's making, $600.
Right.
A really good weekend, she could be, making, 1,000. A crummy weekend, she's gonna make like, a couple hundred.
Right.
So it's all predicated on how well the sales are at the booth. So she runs the booth. She is pretty much there every weekend, especially the weekends I'm not there. And the weekends I'm not there, I will have someone else come in to help, because although the booth, it's possible to run the booth solo, I have a lot of experience. Like, it's my work, it's my stuff. Like, I can handle it solo if I need to, but to have another person running it who has a couple of kids that are also at the fair pretty much every weekend.
And I'm sure there's limits. A couple questions. One of the being, what are the hours there? Is it like 10 to 5? Is it 10 to 8?
So the booth, the show opens at 10:30. I believe they say that you have to be like open and ready to go by 10. And the show ends at 6.
Okay, so that's pretty good.
So yeah, the hours are a little bit shorter than a typical convention day, and it's just 2 days. So
I'm okay with that. At most conventions, I've noticed like the longer conventions don't actually make any more money. People usually just want to make their sales and go to dinner, or make their purchases and go to dinner.
Yeah, at the beginning and the end of the day, like, so the hours are pretty, like, the issue at the fair is it gets dark.
Yeah.
So like, so my booth, if I
got
show
lighting.
Yeah, you got lights.
So like I had a bunch of lights installed, so my booth is really bright now. So come 6 o'clock, like my booth is just like lit up like a beacon at the end of October when it's really kind of starting to get dark out at 6 o'clock. So that really helps. And that was the thing in the rental spot. I didn't have any lights. There was no electricity over there.
Right.
So, when
the thing
dark,
that really stands out to me is the ability, like you're saying, the ability to transform your space in most any way you want, especially permanent lights, right? It's great.
Yep.
And they don't have to be shitty, clip-on convention lights. They can be, and they're all run off an electric grid, right?
I have electricity at the booth. So one of the things, so when I hired the contractor, I had them, there was like this right here is a back like closet area. I had them push that back as far as they could go. I think they pushed it back like another like 2 or 3 feet. I had them install an L-shaped countertop so I could, display all of my playmats and prints. And I bought these like LED tube lights that you can like string together. And I had probably like 8 or like 10 of them that I had put in the booth. So the booth is super bright. And the lighting is really good. Like you can see in like, this photo here, like these metal prints on the back wall, they look really good. The booth, it's super bright. The lighting is really good. The contractor, that was in addition to purchasing the booth. That was another $7,000 that I paid in 2019 for the contractor work. So like there is like some general upkeep to the booth that I have to pay for. Over the summer, the fair, like early in the summer, the fair like sends you stuff. They basically walk around, check everything, and tell you like if there's anything they need you to fix. And they were like, hey, like there's the paint's looking kind of bad in some areas. Think you need to repaint the booth. So I talked to my contractor, and he had some guys that paint. So that was, almost, I think it was like somewhere around like $4,500. He might have done some other stuff in the booth. I can't quite remember.
This
but
was
like,
which year that he was doing the paint?
That was this past summer.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you like what a more normal year's upkeep cost ends up being like.
So when in 2019 I had this set up, I really liked it, but for 2021 I wanted to expand and add some more countertops. And so like I don't know if I have a better photo, but so here there's these 3 panels, and the original booth, those would swing open. There were pulleys up on the second floor, and that's how they would have light come in. But I was like, I don't want to do that because I want wall space so I can hang stuff. And there are these support beams that are angled. So anything that hangs on these wooden panels, there's a very like specific area that they can fit in. So what I did was I asked my contractors, like, I want you to seal like all of that off, make it totally flat, and then add a countertop right here so I can hang and display more stuff. And that looked like this. So he sealed that whole wall off, and I also asked him to put lights underneath so I could hang canvases and larger limited edition prints, and they would be illuminated. So that was like, I think somewhere around like $5,000. That was not something that needed to happen, but it was like, hey, I'd really like
that's a reinvestment
in the booth.
Right.
I had to replace the doors were like falling off the booth. So I think 2 years ago they were like, hey, you need to have like new doors put on. So my contractor, I also pay him to go climb a huge ass ladder to go up on the roof and sweep all of the pine needles off, because there's no way I'm doing that. And he like keeps on mentioning is like, like the roof, there's some spots on the roof. I'm like, man, if it's not leaking, I don't want to hear about it. I do not want to.
What kind of roof is it? Is it a tin roof or is it a wood roof?
No, it's a wood shingle roof. It's got to be like period. The issue with my booth is it doesn't have a very steep grade, so it's kind of like this. So all the pine needles just sit on it.
Yeah.
And the previous owner did not take good care of the booth. He said that he would go up every season and sweep off the pine needles, but he never did. So, those pine needles just stack. And when it gets wet, it just stays wet and it doesn't dry out.
Yep.
So
I have a problem up there.
So and like
so if someone were pretty handy, they could save some money. If they're willing to give up the time cost.
I do know, like any major construction, you'd probably have to be certified.
Yeah, I bet the Ren Fair is not going to let you do your own electricity. I didn't think about that. That's not good.
So, like, I mean, my personal opinion is just like, I'd just rather pay someone to just do it.
Sure, it just depends on the person, right?
Yeah, but like, there's certainly things inside the booth that you could probably, you don't need a contractor to do. It's possible that like sealing off this wall, I didn't ask for like approval or permission to do it because I was like, it's just inside the booth and they're not going to care. But like you could probably get away with doing something like this in the booth. But any like major structural stuff, you would need to probably get approval from.
Right.
But it's a house in the woods. Like there's bugs.
Right.
There's always gonna be stuff. This past year, I go into the closet to open it up, and like there is an avalanche of acorn clippings. I guess there was some squirrels that just loved my shed because there's a little hole outside where they could easily get in and out. And they used my closet as their winter stash. Like I opened the door, and, like cascading. It was ridiculous. It's like, but like it's in the woods. Like there's gonna be issues like that. Like there are some ants or bugs that are in the booth. I talked to my contractor, like, how much of an issue is this? Like, should I, contact an exterminator? And he's like, well, you are out in the woods, and I'm like, exactly. Like, there's some expectation that the maintenance is going to be a little more onerous than an actual house because it's in the woods.
You're upkeeping a shack in the woods. How about like flooding or issues like that? I know that in some of the previous years you've had some extreme weather events come through. How's that affected things?
So my booth, it's raised, so there's a big step. So I personally haven't dealt with any flooding inside the booth. However, there was one year, I think it was 21, maybe 22, and all of a sudden the sky just opened up and like torrential rained for like an hour, and the entire site flooded. So I don't want to try to like dig through and find like the photos I posted of it, but like the front of my booth turned into a lake. I shot some video of a woman walking in like ankle deep water right outside my booth because it totally flooded. That happened once. There's a couple other times where like a giant puddle opened up, but the fair site is where I believe it used to be like a cranberry farm.
So it's a former bog.
Yep.
Helpful.
So when it rains hard,
What months out of the year? What two months is this going on?
September and October.
Okay, so you're not dealing with heat. That's good.
Well, in New England, the first couple of weekends in September are usually pretty bad.
Right. Okay.
Like I think this past year there was someone that had to be a rescue came because they were dealing with dehydration or heat stroke. But usually like the first 2-3 weekends it's pretty hot and very humid. But after that it starts to cool off. And in October you get to like wear like the fancy like fur and like wool cloaks and everything.
Right. So this isn't something that every artist could do, right? If I were painting spaceships, I'm not going to be at the Renaissance Fair.
So you probably might have a problem with sci-fi, but like there's another artist at the fair that does more like surrealist stuff, and they're looking for artists. My fair was very excited when I, put in an application because there is no one else that does, the kind of fantasy art that I do at the fair.
Right.
And having, because they said they were very excited. I guess Ed Beard used to be a consistent regular at my fair, and they were like, we haven't had anyone doing this kind of fantasy art since he left. And that was, I think they said like 20 years ago. So the other big benefit about Ren fairs is if your work fits, and it doesn't have to be just dragons,
It could also be castles.
It could be castles and landscapes, but like, you know, Alan, your stuff would fit easy. Bruce, I think, you know, some of
I've
the
got
more
plenty
sci-fi
of
stuff
right.
might
I'd have
be.
to cull and
I
decide what
mean,
showed up, but
I what I probably say is apply with the more fantasy elemented stuff and put the rest out, and just, you know, it's better to ask for forgiveness than ask for permission. You know, like when I did my fair, when I did the application, they asked like what products that you plan on selling, because they need to make sure it doesn't compete with anyone else.
or
And I mentioned, you know, I have these like large mats for like computer or tabletop gaming. And they're like, I don't know about that. And I was like, okay, hold on, let me explain this again, because, you know, playmats are a big part of my business.
yeah,
And I explained, I was like,
that would
it's
be
for
rough.
like tabletop gaming. A lot of people do use it as a mouse pad, but, you know, the type of people that are going to be coming to this fair are going to be into this, and they're going to be purchasing it because
D&D
it's
folks and so on are
right.
gonna.
And they approved it. I also was selling mouse pads, and I never asked. You know, I don't do mouse pads anymore, but I just put them out.
They're scrolls. They're high quality scrolls.
I just put it out there, and they never came around. I was like, we didn't approve
at that
this.
point, they've approved the playmats, and the mouse pads are just a smaller version
Yeah.
of the same thing.
Yeah.
That's what I'd say about the space. You know, if you are painting spaceships, oh no, this is a flying creature. I saw it in the night. I swear.
Yeah.
So it seems like their problem was that the product itself was something that might take you out of that
Yes.
Renaissance,
Right.
like might feel a little anachronistic if it's too connected to like technology and stuff.
Yes.
Like the
but,
LED lights.
I sell metal prints. They never said anything about that. You know, I know like some other vendors, they might be a little more of a stickler, but like I think I'm lucky that they like me because I provide something that
Sure.
they don't have a lot of. There's not a lot of artists at these fairs. So if you have a local fair that is decently sized, or if you don't mind tents, you try it out, and you're gonna have a clientele that is interested in art, and there's no other artists there. Like, if you want dragon art, I am the only person at my fair that sells it. Whereas at Dragon Con, even though, you know, like, a lot of people do dragons, so like I have to compete with everyone there.
Sure. Even I've got a couple dragons in my setup at this point.
Yeah. So, you know, it's the overall cost per weekend is a lot less than a typical big convention. You know, because like my booth, it comes down to somewhere around $470 to $500 a weekend.
And just to be clear, it is 2 days, right? Saturday, Sunday.
2 days. Now, Labor Day weekend, opening weekend, is a 3-day weekend, so it's open on Monday, and Columbus Day / Indigenous Peoples Day is also open. So those two are 3-day weekends. But every other weekend is 2 days. Most Ren fairs are just 2 days.
Okay, I'm going to look into this. I don't know about the 8 weeks straight thing. That would be a tough sell for me.
It's tough, but
There's a
all
payoff.
set up. So, like, for instance, you know, next week I'm flying to Seattle for Emerald City Comic Con. I'm flying out on Monday. I'm having a fun day on Tuesday. Wednesday is setup day. The show is Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Got to tear down, and then I fly home on Monday. So that's an entire week.
Right.
Whereas the Ren Fair, what I do now is I wake up early on Saturday morning, because the fair site is about 3 hours from me. I will drive to the fair site. I might come a little bit after open, just because my booth worker gets there early, sets
Right.
everything up, and you don't need two people. And I'll show up and work the booth for the day, drive home to my parents, and then do that again on Sunday. And then Monday morning, I drive back home. So I'm able to have my regular standard work week, Monday through Friday, and still sell at the fair. It's long, and like I'm very tired by the end of the fair, because when you add up Gen Con and Dragon Con, and the
The fact
weekend
that
that
you're
I need
And
double
the
to make
booking.
the
fair.
fair and set up, and I'm
Yeah.
basically I don't have a weekend off for like 2 months. um it's tiring, but when if you're getting really good sales per weekend, it's worth it.
And
I
the
don't know if I'd be in a house that I own if it weren't for the sales that I make at my Ren Fair. Like I without the Ren Fair, I would be like teetering on like struggle bus. The Ren Fair alone, it's a couple of months of grueling weekends and long hours, but I'm able to live a very comfortable life where I'm not stressed about my bank account.
Right.
which is a rare enough thing these days. And when we're
Right?
seeing whole sectors of the commercial arts collapsing, having something that you have every year that is going to, weather permitting, provide like a basis for your income. Like you're not going to be, having nothing,
Yep.
assuming there's not like a worldwide pandemic or something. Um, and like that's definitely like quite a good thing. The other thing I'm noticing about this is that in comparison with a Comic-Con or something, the barrier to entry is a little higher, especially for the level of it that you're doing, where you've
Yep.
invested in real estate essentially in the rent fair. And so in this period where all the lily pads are collapsing and then everyone's like piling into the last remaining ones, having a bit of that barrier to entry is actually a good thing for those who are doing it, because as we can see, they were so excited that an artist was joining in, which is not normally the case for most events that we do.
Yep.
And that tells you something about the supply and demand for that situation. It puts it in your favor. And so if you can pony up the necessary investment, like that's a very solid proposition.
Yeah. And the other thing to keep in mind, like, the booth, it's a lot. I paid 20,000 for it, but like that money doesn't disappear,
Right.
right? Because that's property now that I own, and whenever I decide that
So
I no longer want to do the fair, I can sell it.
That's true.
I'm not going to make back every dollar, from the
or
purchase
but
of
it
the
doesn't need
booth
to.
and all of the upkeep and maintenance that I've done.
You might if you
But
keep it long enough.
but well, I mean, I'm not going to be able to sell this thing for like $60,000-$70,000.
Yeah,
You
what he
know,
means is the yearly upkeep adds on to that
Yeah,
total,
I
right?
know.
But
yeah,
Yeah, it's surpassing inflation.
but that 20,000 that I put down, I will probably be able to get back.
Right.
Um, so that's why like it certainly sucks when you're making the purchase. Um, but like I was like, it's gonna be hard, but like worst case scenario, I can sell it and
Yeah,
get
$20,000. I think artists, especially, we live in this world where when you look at inventory costs, convention costs, website costs, things like that, we're living in a world where our costs are relatively little to pretty much every other business startup in existence. It compares what you're doing to, I don't know, the cost and profit of running a restaurant or a farm, and I think you'll find $20,000 is at the very low end of things.
yep.
Um,
The
I
other
I've spent a lot of money on just a simple home renovation recently, and $20,000 just seems doable. It doesn't seem. If you told me 5, 6 years ago, before I lived in a home, before I owned property, I would have scoffed. I'd have been like, I'll never spend $20,000 on something.
I mean, like, but like 20,000, I think that was probably close to what my income was like in 2017, 2016 when I started.
Yeah.
So like, you know, a lot of artists, especially if you're starting out, like it's like that's like my yearly
Unimaginable.
income, like
Yeah.
just gone.
Well, it's cheaper than a car, especially if you're paying off a loan. I mean,
Yep.
it's cheaper than
The
most
other
car
thing
payments.
the other thing to keep in mind, I would say my profit, like, to expense ratio, it's probably somewhere around 50, maybe a little over 50%. So when I do the Ren Fair for a weekend, I'm getting back somewhere close, if not more than 50% in profit to
You mean
the gross sales. Or as opposed to a
okay.
comic convention, it's probably somewhere around 40 to 30%. So the cost of entry is very high, but once you're in, it is much more cost effective to do a Ren Fair than traveling around to 8 different shows. And the fact that it's all in one location makes it so much easier. Like, I'm not, I just did MegaCon like 3 weeks ago, and I'm doing Emerald City, and then the week after that I'm doing AwesomeCon. Like, if you're looking to break into the convention scene, and you have you have some good work, and you have some confidence in what sells, a Ren Fair might be easier because it's all in one location. It's 8 weeks guaranteed, and you don't need to find 8 other travel to shows in order to do.
That's very similar. It's sort of an in-between to if you go around and talk to people that do more local shows or farmers markets, creators markets, things like that. There are people who do this every single weekend. I know people that make preserves, and they make pretty much an entire income, but they have to be out every single weekend at every single farmers market, right? It's not uncommon to see that in people that go to farmers markets versus artists that go to conventions. Maybe how many conventions are you going to, Bruce?
I think I've got 12 maybe this year.
Yeah. So that's compared to the people that do the smaller shows, living the life. I met a guy that lived entirely they run a publishing company, and they live pretty much half their year out of an RV, just going to these different shows. An RV with a trailer hooked to it so they can carry their inventory around.
A lot of Ren Fair people, they travel around to multiple fairs. They'll do that. I do about 18 events, I think. So basically the same number of conventions Bruce does, but you just add on 8 weekends of a Ren Fair. But if I was doing 18 different drive to or fly to shows, that's half the year that I would be traveling.
When are you going to be making the art?
Yeah. And that's the other thing that's so great about the fair is that I'm able to go home on Monday, and Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I have my, pretty much my normal regular schedule where I'm making art Tuesday through Friday. And I might, in the evenings or on Monday, I might be, I'm probably doing inventory and maybe packaging some orders if somebody ordered something and they needed it shipped, or they weren't able to come back and they order something online, but for the most part, I have a normal work week, and then I just go to the fair for the weekend and I make money. Bruce, you travel to pretty much all of your shows. You don't have a lot of local shows. Imagine if you
there's just a couple local shows that I can drive to.
Imagine if you had an 8-week show that you just show up for the weekend.
Right.
It's easier to add that into your schedule than,
for sure.
Here's this other show that I have to fly to and purchase all this stuff.
And for example, if you were mainly a freelance artist and let's say you're working for Magic or something, that means that you can block out, like if you're just like, okay, I'm just going to focus on Ren Fair for that 8 weeks, like that's easier to block out of your schedule in some ways. Just say to the art directors, okay, like don't call me in for that particular wave, or the one or two waves that are around that time when they're assigning um, during that period, but the whole rest of the year could potentially be open to working on stuff and
Well,
not having to work around anything.
you'd still get your
And
work
that's the
days
other
in.
thing. Like conventions, they change dates all the time. Like this
Yeah.
is a set 8 weeks every year.
Yeah, every year
You
you know
know.
exactly when it's going to be, and you can block that out if you need to.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and you get to leave your inventory there.
Yep. Inventory state, like,
Totally control your
on this
space.
photo here, like this stuff does not change. The only things, like when I take down, I'll take down the canvases, the stuff that it's hanging, just in case like there's like a storm and there's like wind or something, or just something happens. Like I'll take all that stuff down, but all the prints, they all just stay. And so Sunday before I leave, and usually like in the last hour, I start counting all of the playmats and prints and all that stuff. So I know like my end of, weekend inventory, so I can, find out if I need to message Bruce, Drew. I'm sorry, message Drew and be like, "Hey, Drew, I need more playmats and metal prints."
I thought that Drew had decided to stop doing that, or is he still doing it?
Oh, he's still
doing it. I think he's not taking new clients because of
his
assholes like me that
his
It's all
capacity
Stephen.
is fully spoken for.
It's because for some reason every week in September he keeps getting calls from Stephen.
I was like, Drew, I'm in an emergency. I need like 150 mats by Friday.
No, I'm gonna look into this. If there's one semi-local, I live in the South, so I'm not sure how. There's something to be said for. I talk about living in the South, but there's something to be said for such a lack of events like this that oftentimes you'll see them overly crowded. I went to one local convention last year. It was a lot more crowded than you'd expect being in Mississippi. But
and I would give you the advice that person gave me back in like 2015 2016. She's like, ask them like, hey, do you have any rental spaces? Can I try it for like a couple of weekends? I just contacted the Denver Renaissance Fair because I would like to get a second booth, and I asked them, I was like, hey, I'm going to be in Denver for Fan Expo. Is there a chance, do you guys do something similar where I could like try it out for like a rental spot, like in a tent for, the following weekend and see how it goes? And they're like, we're basically totally full up, so we don't have any rental space available. But like, it's worth asking, because like you don't want to do something for 8 weeks and be like, this did not work and this was awful.
yeah, I've got several contacts, if they still remember my name, that do the more local fairs from my SCA days. So I could check in with them. I'm going to look into this. It may not be an 8-week thing here either. I'm sure they're all different.
There are other fairs that are smaller, that are only for like a couple of weekends, but like,
Yeah.
If we're talking about like the big fairs where they have permanent structured booths,
Right.
my understanding is most of those are 8 weeks. Those are going to be a lot more expensive because it's 8 weeks and it has that
Right, bigger risk, bigger reward, though.
that permanence. But like, if you have a local Ren fair, and you're able to like get a nice tent or something and set up for a couple of weekends, and you like it, I will say, like, when it rains, it does suck.
How about site security? Is that ever an issue at these things?
I personally haven't dealt with or had any issues. I lock up my booth before I leave each night. I do know that like during the winter, I think in 21, some kids decided to like go into the fair site, and they somehow got like into my booth and grabbed like one of my fire extinguishers and had some like fun.
Oh my god.
Yeah, but like nothing was taken. You know, they sent me an email. Me and like
The
the booths
kids
that
sent
were
you an email?
no, the fair sent me an email. Me and the booths that were in the area where it happened. Like, hey, just to let you know this happened.
Okay.
But
So
they
they
do
actually
have
paid
like a
attention.
caretaker that
Yeah.
lives, you know, during the off season. But you know, like I haven't personally noticed any thefts or anything.
It seems like all the right dominoes have lined up for you too. You know, if I were to check my local Ren Fair, for instance, and it be, let's say, 5-6 hours away, that's not something I think I'd be willing to do. But
Yeah.
you're you're just close enough. You have somewhere to stay. Um, you had the income already in place to make the big purchases when they came up.
Yeah, like a lot of things lined up, and I'm certainly not saying like, oh, everyone just go out and, you know, purchase a expensive rent fair booth because it worked for me.
Right, right.
But if
That's
if
yeah.
you are someone that is an artist and there is a fair near you, or just like I recommend just checking,
Investigating,
seeing what's
yeah.
there,
Yeah,
because
going first
you
or
know
even testing.
it's smaller than a comic conventions. You're not competing with autographs or photo ops or anything. There's alcohol there. People are looking to buy stuff.
Oh, there's alcohol there?
Yeah,
Yeah, no wonder you're making bank. The one show I went to where they allowed
there are
alcohol.
bars everywhere. So like it's great because like it's a family fun activity where families can bring their kids, and there's lots of stuff for little kids to do, and there's lots of stuff for adults to do.
Um,
So
yeah, it's something I'm definitely going to check out. Yeah, one thing you did mention is that people shouldn't just jump into things like this. There are too many stories that you hear of younger artists who go to their convention for the first time and they get angry at losing some money. This person went. Stephen Najarian said he was making 20K at Dragon Con.
he told me to purchase this booth, and like
He said he got a double booth and made 20K. So I got a double booth. I only made $500.
yeah.
It definitely helps to test out the thing at the lower end before jumping into the deep end. I mean, Steve, you'd been doing conventions for a bit and you'd seen that your convention booths were successful.
Yes.
You had the sales pattern down, like you knew your work and how to sell it to people, and you'd figured out various ways to make the most of it, right? Before you
Yeah.
jumped into this. So
And it was a 3-year process for
Right.
me to go from, you know, being interested in it, trying it out for 2 weekends, thinking that okay, you know, the second weekend kind of sucked because it rained, and I can't expect, you know,
Every
the
weekend to be
previous
good,
weekend
yeah.
every weekend, but like I think it's worth trying.
Yeah.
Tried it, it went okay. I tried it again, it went a little better, and then, you know, an opportunity opened up where I was like I'm kind of on the line here on what is, you know, whether it's worth it or not. And I decided, like, you know what, like, you know, money's money. Like, I will eventually make the money back.
Right.
But like, it's not like I contacted a fair and they're like, yeah, we have a booth that's available for $20,000 and you have to be there for 8 weeks. And I was like, cool, sign me up. Like,
It's a big decision.
it is a
thinking.
huge financial decision. You know, it's the equivalent of like, you know, buying a car or you know, it's not the same as buying a house, but like at the time in 2018, it kind of felt like that for me because like 20,000, that's a lot of money.
It probably
Yeah.
felt a lot like buying your first big booths, you know,
Yeah.
that same type.
So, you know, but there are smaller fairs out there. Like, for instance, you know, there's a fair here in Connecticut that's over the summer.
Mhm.
I unfortunately can't do it because my fair has a do not compete clause with all fairs in New England.
Hmm.
But like,
That's
you know,
strange.
So if you wanted to do multiple of these things, you'd have to break it down region by region potentially.
Why do you think they
and
have a do not compete to
because they
bring people to that
don't
fair in
want to compete
particular?
with any, yeah, they want to have the best booths. They have the biggest, best fair.
Could you imagine
And
if conventions did that? You can come to Gen Con, but not Dragon Con.
yeah.
God, no.
I mean, it's a
Don't give
lot
them any
easier.
ideas.
Yeah.
It's a lot easier when you lock someone in for 8 weeks, and the potential sales that you get from that. But that's kind of the next step that I want to pursue. Is I want to purchase a second, maybe third booth, and just pay someone to run it
Yeah.
for the 8 weeks.
That's a good question. Wh- when this whole thing keeps getting bigger, at what point do you become more of a managerial and creation role versus running these things? At what
CEO of
point are
the
you
Najarian
hiring?
Empire.
Yeah, at
Yeah.
what point are you just shipping pallets to cons and letting an assistant run it?
I don't know. Like the conventions, I don't feel like the profit is there to be worth like shipping pallets around. I am this summer trying. I have a regular from my Twitch stream that I've met and who's assisted me at shows before, and he's mentioned interest in running booths. So I'm going to try him this summer at Boston Fan Expo. I purchased a booth. I'm waiting to hear if I've got the booth or not because Fan Expo makes you pay and they don't tell you
Right.
yet whether you have it or not. So that's a little up in the air. But the plan is I'm going to go to Origins, come back home, drive to Boston, set up the booth with him. I'll be there on Friday just to make sure that he, pretty much has everything that he needs. And probably on Saturday, I'm going to drive and to Colorado for Denver Fan Expo because Boston is the week before, and
Right.
I can't do Boston and then drive to Denver because Denver is a 4-day show, which means I have to be there Tuesday night
Yeah.
in order to be there for setup for Wednesday, and I'm
And you
not
got some
doing
driving to do.
yeah, but you know, I would like to maybe if sales are good enough to have someone that is looking to break into the convention scene is open to traveling to shows. If the profit is high enough that I'm making money and there's enough money to pay them a decent amount to do the show and enough left for me that it's like I'm not making pennies for a
Yeah.
lot of effort, like sure. The Ren Fair, like I'm figuring if I can purchase like a second booth and at the end of the weekend give them somewhere around 30 to 40% of the profit. If because my fair in New England, King Richard's, it's like a medium to high end fair. There are a lot of fairs that are a lot bigger, so like if I get a booth at one of those, you figure like a decent fair for me, the profit is somewhere around like $3,000. So giving someone, 30 to 40%, that's a decent amount of money for a weekend.
Yeah.
Right.
And then I don't have to do any of the work beyond I might have to drive to the site before the fair to set it up and handle the logistics of shipping inventory to them and then maybe packing it up at the end of the fair and taking it back.
You
But
notice a
that's
big difference in sales between when you're on site at an event versus when you're having people run it for you? Like, I mean, I think of you as like a consummate salesman. Like, you're probably of our cohort, one of the best that I know.
I definitely have a lot of fun. I mean, you are back to back with me
I
at
hear it.
Dragon Con.
Yeah.
You hear me. I have a really good time. I enjoy sales. I don't think there's a really big drop. My booth worker is good. They have an entirely different like style
Okay.
and vibe to how they sell, but they're good at it. You know, they're the important thing with convention sales is that you are, you know, engaging, that you're like you're saying hello to people, you're asking them if they have any questions, you're telling them, like, if they're looking at one print, telling them that, hey, there's a deal if you buy two, or a deal if you buy three, or,
Right.
you know, stuff like that. She's good at that. She does it totally different than I do, and which is fine. Like, I'm not, you know, Bruce, you and I have talked about like convention sales. Like, I might be able to like teach you all of my like one-liners and stuff.
Yeah.
But like, it's not going to be authentic.
Yeah,
Right?
it's the
different.
underlying vibe.
It's different for different people, right? So, two things. The first, when I was working for Todd, you know, I changed like pretty much his whole print structure and pricing and all that, and we were at each individual show getting above 10K, approaching 20K. And then the year that I left, they went back, or no, because that was COVID. So a year after that, they went back to Emerald City. And I was so nervous that they were not going to make the same numbers. Turns out they made the same number. I wasn't any factor at all, other than restructuring. And then shout out to Joanna. Is it Sabine? Sabin? I don't think I've ever pronounced her last name. You guys know her. Barnum. Joanna Barnum.
Oh, Barnum. Yeah, I was gonna say, like,
yeah.
threw me off with that.
I'm really bad.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Like,
Joanna said
Sabine.
that, yeah, I
What?
think it's somebody I went to school with. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Joanna
Yes.
Barnum.
Joanna Barnum.
Yeah, shout out to her, and she'll be the first to mention that she doesn't do a lot. I was talking to her at Gen Con, I think this year, and she was well over 10K. And we were sitting there talking, and a customer came up, and she just, I don't even think she said hello. She was sitting there, and she's like, yeah, I made like 12K today. I'm like, oh. So I think salesmanship matters, but I think booth setup supersedes that all the time.
Booth setup is, in my opinion, the most important. When it comes to sales, the important thing is saying hello to people. Mm-hmm. So, like, what I like to say is like, hey, how's it going?
Yeah.
You know, you start a conversation, you make sure that they're aware that you're around if they have any questions, and if they have questions, you answer, and you get like. What I think I do is I give people options, or I help narrow down people's choices so they can help make decisions.
Right.
But I'm not sitting there holding a metal print like, you should definitely buy this. Mm-hmm. You know, and convince them what this metal print is going to do for their life.
Yeah.
If they buy a metal print.
Yeah, I think so many people, when they get started in the idea of selling, think that you can force someone to do something, and I don't think that's true.
Yeah. I joke with people where they're like, oh, you know, I'm just making my first lap around, like I'll come back, and it's like, or how about buy it here right now, and then you don't come back. Oh, well, I haven't looked at everything else. It's like, well, you see, I'm selfish and I don't care about everybody else. I care about you and me. You know, but like, they know it's a joke.
Yeah.
I'm not doing this because, like, I actually think I'm going to, you know, convince this person to not shop anywhere else and buy from me.
Right.
The whole reason why I do it is, A, I like to have fun, and I like to, you know, make a joke or get a reaction out of them. But also, like, if I can make a memorable experience with them at the booth, I think they're more likely to remember me, and they may come back.
Oh yeah, I love that.
Or they may buy from you the next year because you were memorable enough to stick in there, right?
Yep. Now, when it comes to the fair, I do know that there are some people that purchase from me that have never met me before because they come on weekends that I wasn't there. And there was like a woman online who like asked what weekends I was going to be at the fair because they wanted to meet me. And I didn't realize New York Comic Con changed the date by a week. So I gave her the wrong dates and she came and I
Ooh,
wasn't there.
ouch.
I felt really bad about it. But like, it didn't stop her from buying anything. I think what I hear from my booth worker is they will ask, is the artist here? Because they want to meet the artist. But if she's like, unfortunately he's not here this weekend, he's at another event, they're like, cool. It's kind of one of those, like, it would be nice,
Right.
but it's not a deal breaker. If you have like a friend or booth worker that is going to be working the booth for a weekend or two.
Yeah, I think the art always, or the product, but in this case, the art always comes first, right? Um,
and there are people that come multiple weekends. I know some fairs, they have like a season pass. My fair, people will come like multiple weekends out of the year, so like they might
They have a good chance
spend
of
one
seeing
weekend
you.
just going to all the shows. They might spend one weekend kind of walking around shopping to like decide what they want to get, and then like towards the end they'll come and make their purchase. But I personally haven't noticed like a major drop in my sales for weekends that I'm not there.
mhm.
I mean, maybe like I could make the difference by a couple $100 or so, but like the people that I have, I'm lucky. I have people they're pretty good. The person who's working with me at Boston has assisted me at shows, and he's good at it. He has another friend that he introduced me to. She helps me at shows. She's really good. Um, they both helped me at Rhode Island Comic Con in November when my back was just completely
Right.
wrecked, and they did great. Um, so, if you hire someone, have them work with you for like a weekend. And, for me, like when I've had assistants, I remember one year at Awesome Con, my cousin that I stayed with, I asked her like, hey, do you know anyone that might want a badge to come to the show? And, they just help out for a couple hours. She found someone, and at first the person was super nervous, didn't want to like talk to anybody because they were afraid of messing up. And I told them, I'm like, look, I'd rather you talk to people and engage them, and if you make a mistake, I am here to fix it. And by like at the end of the day, they were making their own sales, and they were doing a great job. It's just honestly just being personable and saying hello and answering questions.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always a nerve-wracking to me whenever, I don't know, you'll walk up somewhere and no one acknowledges you. It's almost like an invitation to not buy anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awkward
I
silence.
mean, it's hard because like there's this idea that like you're walking up to the booth and you just want to look.
Yeah.
And you don't want to get the person's hopes up that like you're gonna buy. So like there are definitely people that do not want to be engaged because it's an immediate turnoff. But
It's impossible for me to walk around farmers markets or things anymore. I get so uncomfortable because I know what's going on in the other person's head, especially if they're not making sales that day. That
Right.
I get so awkward.
Yeah.
All the more important that you don't have this kind of desperation dripping off of you like flop sweat kind of feeling, right? Like if you can get past that, where you can just be like, I'm around if you need me. There's stories on the back. Feel free to engage with that at your own leisure. Like, having the right kind of tone and being able to mean it, right?
Yeah.
Can make a big difference to
I
that.
tried, a good example is I tried your spiel. I think at Gen Con, I was losing my voice a little bit, and I tried the spiel of saying, "Oh, I'm the artist. Just letting you know. Let me know if you have any questions." And after I think the third or fourth time, my wife turns to me and she's like, "Please don't ever say that again."
So, Alan, have
Why?
you tried the menu trick?
Yeah, I've tried the menu thing, but since I have Sarah around, I don't need it as much. I got to do it once.
Nope.
The reason it didn't work for me, as far as saying what Bruce says, is that I guess I talk to people, and people will stand there and wait to talk to me. And anyway, it's just saying, "Hey, I'm around if you need anything," doesn't work because maybe it's my delivery of it. Uh, it's like an invitation for them to go away. It's like I don't want them there.
That's why you have the menu. So the trick about the menu is you hand them the menu. You're like, here's a menu. Everything, what I tell them is like one side is prints, the back side is playmats. And if you have any questions, let me know. And then I walk away. And now they're stuck. They're holding this menu. And like it's kind of like rude to like not look. So then now they're looking, and now they're stuck at the booth because they can't leave until they give the menu back. I mean, there are definitely people that like kind of look and then you just like put it down and walk away. But
for
by
some
and
people,
large, you hand someone a menu and walk away, they're gonna like actively look at it.
Yeah.
And then there's the chance that they're gonna find something. And then you come back.
I haven't used the menu. When did I first try it? I think I tried it at Gen Con one year. The problem with the menu when you're still in the Artist Alley booths is that you can hand them the menu and then you're still standing there.
There's no space to walk away.
Yeah. So really, the menu, I think I still have it. I'm pretty sure I do, but it's outdated. It's worth it if you're very crowded. And then you can say, hold on one second, here's my menu if you need it. But it works great if you're in a 10 by 10 booth because then you can step away and you're probably more likely to have somebody else to talk to.
So my argument for the menu, because sometimes people are like, oh, well, I can just see everything right here. I'm like, yeah, but there's more stuff on the menu. I was like, there might be something that you really like that's not here. And then they're like, that is a good point. And then they look at it.
Yeah, it's a really good option for me now because I have so much like Bulgarian book interior stuff that I sell that is totally irrelevant to anybody who doesn't know that series. And I'm quickly running out of table space. So that's
the benefit of the menu, that you can
have stuff behind.
You can have as many prints as you can without sacrificing table space. You put out what you think are the best sellers, and then that's what's going to bring people in.
Yeah, I think I'm going to.
And then you show them the menu, and then it's like, oh, there's more stuff.
Yeah, I think I'm definitely going to do some sort of like maybe like laminated flip open thing for the book area because I have like over 100 illustrations for that and a lot of different options. And it's impossible.
If you have like 18 by 24 bags, what you might want to do is take an 18 by 24 bag, cut a piece of foam core, and score it down the middle, and then you could like glue or attach your menu on the sides of the menu, and then you have an actual like flip out menu that can like fold.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I've been thinking about upgrading to that, but I can fit everything on like one side of a 12 by 18 will have all the prints, one side of the 12 by 18 will have all the playmats, so I'm not like in a huge rush to I don't need to upgrade.
What I really need in my life is an artist proof binder that I can that will make me more than 50% of my money. That's what I need, Bruce.
I was just trying to think of a solution for the Artist Alley problem, and I'm like, okay, well, maybe you could hand the menu, and then you
go down the stairs.
I mean, I like at MegaCon, I had a 12-foot Artist Alley table. It's 2 6-foot tables on an end cap. I'd hand people like there's table space, but there really wasn't a lot of room behind the table to move around. But I didn't have that much of an issue with it I'm probably a little aggressive with the menus. If I see someone that's interested, I'll hand it to them and be like, "Would you like a menu?" Sometimes they're like, "No, I'm good." I'm like, "Okay, well, if you change your mind, all of the prints are on one side, all the playmats are on the back." Or they're like, "Why do I need a menu?" And I explain it to them, and they're like, "Actually, that's a really good idea. That's actually really smart. Like, I wish I could take credit for it, but I got the idea from somebody else." So, shout out to Naomi Van Doren, who at Gen Con was like, I was talking to her before the show, and she like had a menu. I was like, "What's the point of a menu?" She's like, "Let me tell you about menus." She told me, I was like, I'm in. This sounds like, yeah, I'm totally for this. And then I think at my next show, it might have been Dragon Con, I brought a menu, and I was like, "This is amazing."
Well, it also works if you have a variety of products. And I know at her peak, I'm sure she's still at peak, Naomi had a huge variety of products.
Yeah, it's just like, when you have a small space, you can't fit everything.
Oh yeah.
So it's just a really great way to maximize, and also when it's really working, you can have a huge amount of people engaged at your booth. So one year at New York Comic Con, it was the year, I think it was the year you were there, Bruce, where I had the inline, and it was not going very well. But Sunday was like a really good day, and I had a friend with me who was helping me, and basically, I would be helping one person, she would be helping another person. Behind them, because they would like walk to the front, they had the menus, they would hand the menu back, and then the people behind them were looking at the menu and deciding what they wanted to buy. And then behind them were people waiting to get the menu.
See, that's where I think it shines, if you find a crowd of people.
And I've never like really experienced like that kind of mass. Like that was a sustained mass for a very long time where that was working. Because like when you have a crowd, people walking by are like, "What's going on over here? There's got to be something really cool."
Right.
Which is why when people are at my booth, they're like, "Oh, I'm just looking." I'm like, "That's okay. A, I'm bored and I want someone to talk to, and B, you being here makes the booth look more interesting for other people." So
it's a real occurrence. I think we're way over our hour mark. Which is fine.
I don't mind talking like
which is fine, because I think we're going to try and make it a longer form show. But sometimes I forget we're recording, which is sort of the point. We started having these conversations all the time. We decided we'd start recording them, which is why the show's back a little bit. And so now we can put our instead of hiding behind closed doors, we can put information out there. Anyway, I had a great time talking about Renaissance fairs.
I had a great time.
I've got to get back. It's time for us all to get back.
It's a pleasure, Steve.
Yeah, I guess I should get work done.
Get some work done. Where's that dragon I commissioned from you? I need my coins, Steve.
You need your coin?
My
well, I worked on one design last night, so.
All right. Well, go ahead and let people know where they can find you if they don't know already.
I'm pretty much Najarian art everywhere online. If you're interested in checking out my Twitch stream, it's Steve Najarian art. I stream Tuesdays through Friday when I don't have like freelance work or conventions. 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We hang out, we talk art, games, music, whatever. Bruce sometimes pops in, we hang out, have good conversations. It's fun.
Yeah, I didn't know that was going on. I watched a recording of one. So if you're listening to this, go and ask Steve all your art questions while he's painting.
Yep, I'm as open on Twitch as I am here. So any questions, I'm happy to share. Ask like how a convention goes. I'm happy to give you an idea of like numbers and stuff like that. And I go on rants about why I don't recommend art school.
I was gonna say, if you're lucky, you manage to land in the middle of one of Steve's rants, because they're pretty fun.
Yeah,
we can have
I am known for my rants.
We'll start a separate podcast where we can debate the merits of art school.
There's no debate.
A huge debate. It's a huge. I'm a huge advocate for art school because the art school I went to taught me very little about practical art. It was all abstraction, and so it was such a drive for me to teach myself, which is almost an advertisement against art school for
Yes,
everyone
exactly.
except for me.
It worked for you.
It works for me because
for
it
you.
lights a fire.
Yeah.
I think if I had been in a
Made you mad.
classroom like an atelier and doing anatomy every day, I wouldn't have had the same drive. I was just angry.
Anger is definitely a word that I would use to describe
Your thoughts?
art school. Yeah, and coming out and not feeling like I had the tools that I needed to be successful and needed to get additional training that costed a fraction of the cost, which just exponentially raised my
Right.
anger. Why can the illustration masterclass do this at something like, what was it, like $1,500-$2,500 when art school was like, my art school now is like 75,000. It's ridiculous. Waste of money. Don't go.
All right, great. We'll see you next
All
time
right.
on Hanging Out Podcast, where we're not going to debate art school.